Yo YouTube, this is my video for Friday the 25th of October, which was yesterday. It was too dark at the end of the day for me to do my video, and so that's why it's doing it this morning. I've got a few things to talk about afterwards. So here's my day. I had a job, I didn't have a job in the morning, so I was looking from about 7:30 onwards for any work, and the first job that came up was Boston to Nottingham, small van job. I stuck a £60 bid on. It's 54 loaded miles, and it was for a pickup from 9 o'clock. And I stuck a bid on, and I got a call for it at 8:10, offering me the job, which was great. The only slight problem was I didn't actually have my van yet, because my van was still in the garage, having been serviced the day before, and because I have dialysis on the Thursday, I couldn't pick it up before they closed. So I had already confirmed it was available to collect from 8:30. Actually, from about 8, he said, but I was going to be there for about 8:30. So I left the house straight away with the help of my very patient partner. I had to get a lift in from her, which was really nice. I really appreciated it. Got to the garage, paid as quickly as possible, paid an awful lot of money in the end. Oh yes, it's never ending. I'll come back to that at the end if I remember or have time. Basically, I'm wondering now whether my van's too expensive to keep running, because every 2 months I have a mini service or a regular service, and it's proving to be quite a lot of money each time. And so I'm wondering if maybe I have to think about the cost efficiency of getting a newer van, but this van is good, it works for me, and I'm not completely sure I have the capital to do that, so it might involve getting on finance, and I don't want to do that. So I suspect I'm not going to go down the route, but I need to just think about whether it's worth thinking about. So I'll do some figures and think about that. Right, moving on. So I got it picked up, and I actually made it to the pickup point in Boston. I left there about 8:25, and I made it to the pickup point at 5 to 9, so I was on time. And I was quite surprised because the item that I was collecting was an A4 envelope. Now, I've been to this pickup place before. It's a manufacturing unit. I'm expecting to have, for a small van job, a pallet really. But on this occasion, it was just an envelope with a few papers in. And in the end, I was going to solicitors in Nottingham, so that made a bit of sense when I knew where I was going to. So I made my way to Nottingham. It was about an hour and a half's journey, and delivered the envelope to the receptionist, and then I was in my van looking for my next job. And today, as in Friday, I was thinking, should I try doing like small local trips for the whole day and see whether that actually pays off better? The thinking being that minimum price jobs, you get more per mile, and also you're spending less on fuel overall. And I wasn't quite sure, but I'm always up for experimenting. So my first job had been a £60 job to Nottingham, so I thought, well, that's a good start, let's see what comes up. And what happened to come up next was a job from Heanor to Leicester, a village outside of Leicester, which again was another short wheelbase van job. It was only 11 miles to get to Heanor, about half an hour, The job itself was 42 loaded miles. So I wanted to be quite quick, so I put £50 on. I got a call at 10:37, and I was probably offloaded about 10:30, 10:35. So it was pretty much straight away I got that call. I arrived on site for the pickup at 16 minutes past 11, and I was on a delivery at the delivery point at 16 minutes past 12. It took me exactly an hour to drive that 42 miles. And this item was two items. It was a pallet with 2 cast iron drain covers, and then another item was like a big roll of black plastic electrical conduction tubing. So sort of things underground to carry electric cables. And I arrived, and I was a bit unsure as I was arriving, because I thought the address I was going to in this village was a house, and I thought there's no way I can handball these cast iron drain covers off, even really with help, to be honest. And I had these visions of being stuck at a resident's house and being expected to carry these things off, and I was really quite anxious about that. When I arrived on site, luckily I saw there was a workman's van at the front of this property. So I tried to ring the bell, there's no answer. I went around the back. It was obvious that there was obviously some work going on at the back, and there was 4 people working on an outdoor swimming pool, and they were expecting me to bring their tubing, but they weren't expecting the drain covers. So with a bit of cajoling on my behalf, I got a couple of them to take the drain covers off, and the main guy signed for it, but said that he wasn't expecting the drain covers and he would ring the office to find out what's going on. And he wanted me first to wait, but I said I'm just a courier, I've not got a return journey, and so he understood that and let me go on. So that job was done. I was really pleased they got it off the van for me, because I would have really struggled getting those 2 drain covers off. And then I parked up just down the road out of sight on a sort of on the mainish road of this village, and I was looking for another job. And it was now 12:30 when I got off site, by the time they'd done all that handballing. At 12:31 I got a call for my next job, and it was going from Wigston near Leicester to Redditch. And this was another short job. I thought, well, this is turning out to be a short job day. Small van, 54 loaded miles, and I was about 18 minutes, 6 miles away from the pickup. So I went with £50 for that job, and thought that this is now going to be one of those days where I could do little jobs all day. And I thought I might get 2 or 3 more jobs in. After I did this next job, it ended up being just 2 really. So I left the pickup point in Wigston at 1 o'clock, and all I was collecting was a small package. It was basically like a plastic envelope, I would say. And I didn't bother. It had some paperwork in it, but I didn't bother finding out. When I got to the other end in Redditch, the people there, it was a manufacturing unit, the person picking up was really happy, because he showed me what it was. It was a small, I would say like the size of a 10p piece, sort of plastic seal, and it was for one of their machines, and they couldn't use the machine without this seal. And he said to me that morning they'd had a delivery come, and the delivery had that little seal removed from the package, which I think is incredibly worrying for the industry, that you've got a driver has stolen this washer. But that's what he was implying. Obviously I wasn't there, I didn't know what's going on, and so I was then coming as a backup in the afternoon with another item. I don't know whether the driver did steal it. He said his words were, maybe they thought it was a ring inside here, because it was the size of like a wedding ring. I felt like a wedding ring. I mean, I don't know, but obviously something went wrong, either at the packaging or on the delivery. It wouldn't have gone wrong at the drop-off side. They would have checked it and seen it wasn't there. So I don't know. It seems strange to me, and it's another experience that I've had in this industry that does highlight that some people just aren't very good or very honest or very trustworthy, and obviously that is true, but I like to think the best of people generally, and I think sometimes you have to be realistic that some people can be not like that. Anyway, so I got it delivered. They were really happy that I was there, and they said that they could get it fitted and get on with their work. Clearly they can't manufacture whatever they're manufacturing without these things, this thing. So for them, that £50 plus whatever they pay the shipper was well worth getting that item delivered. And one last point about this, those are the kind of jobs that I really enjoy, because obviously I'm making a big difference to someone's day by doing my job, and that happens every so often. That's really gratifying. Okay, so I had arrived at 2:30 at Redditch, partly down to some traffic, but mainly it was just the distance travelling. So about 1.5 hours from Wixton to Redditch, with a bit of traffic towards the Redditch side. And so now it's 2:30 and I was looking for another job, and I was considering jobs here that took me a long distance, let's say to London and then go home after that, if I get the right money for it. At this moment in time, I'd only made from the 3 jobs £160. I really wanted about another £100 at least, or £120. But it got harder to find a job. I got a call for the next job, which at 25 minutes later, so it was 5 to 3 now. And I was thinking, realistically, this is my last job of the day probably. It was going from Brierley Hill, which was only 20 miles away, and it was 45 minutes drive because of the traffic. And I was going to Daventry, which I thought again was a good area to end up in. I had a fighting chance if I got there in time of getting another job. It was for a long wheelbase van, and it was going to a furniture place, and I was a little bit hesitant about doing this. I only found this out when I got the job, so I thought it might be like a van full of furniture, and that would involve a lot of handballing. So that was what I was expecting. The shipper, I bid £65 for something like 58 miles, something like that, loaded. And when the job was put through to me on CX, it actually came through at £75, because the shipper said he'd worked it out at 61 loaded miles. I thought that was really good to him. He did try and ring me, but the phone didn't ring, so he just put it through as being an extra tenner. So in the end I got £75 for that, for not a lot of extra miles. So fair play to that guy. I appreciated that. So by the time I arrived at Brierley Hill, on that 45-minute journey from Redditch to Brierley Hill, I was thinking, I find this day quite tiring compared to my usual day, which is sort of get in a van, drive for 3 hours, offload, and then do another job for 2 or 3 hours. And so the kind of doing the short stops for less money, for me personally, it's more effort for me to do that, and it is more tiring. So I got tired by the time I was getting on my way to Brierley Hill. I arrived, and the site was actually closed, but the guy waited for me, not because I was late, just because it was just, I think the order they were sending out was late for them. So he loaded me up, and all it was 3 cellophaned padded sides for offices, and it was really easy. It wasn't really a long wheelbase van job at all. It was definitely a small van job, I would say, in the end. So I felt very lucky both ways that I didn't have to do a lot of carrying, and I got paid a decent amount of money for that. I mean, basically £75 for 61 loaded miles for a small van job is very different than a long wheelbase job. But that's what it was advertised as, so that's what I priced it as. So I left the Brierley Hill pickup point at 5 to 4, and it was about an hour and 3/4 because of traffic to get to Daventry. So from arriving at Redditch, the rest of my day was pretty much dominated by Friday afternoon traffic. So that was kind of why I couldn't get another job in, like a fifth job in. And that was it. That was the end of my day. I got to Daventry. I did look for jobs. This was about 6ish by the time I got it offloaded. Sorry. I was going to a house in the end, and I did ring before I got there just to double check what's the situation. And the guy that was taking the order said his wife would be there to pick them up if he wasn't there, and she was. So I took a photo and then came away and looked for another job. But by now it's sort of nearly 6 o'clock, and obviously there wasn't a lot on Friday afternoon at 6 o'clock. So I just started my way home from Daventry, about an hour and 3/4 drive, and I was looking for jobs all the way along. I had been looking at jobs for Monday on my drive to Daventry, and I didn't get anything in the end. I've been on a few things. There were some really good jobs. There's one job going to Livingston for Monday, another job going to sort of North Wales, I think it was, but going from sort of somewhere in, I think like Downham Market, for example, which is a long way east. So for me, it was, I don't know, Chatteris was the one job. The other job, I think, was Downham Market to Livingston. So Chatteris to, let's say, Rhyl, something like that. So it was a nice long journey, but I didn't get either of those jobs, unfortunately. So my stats for Friday are as follows, and this was my experiment with small van work. So I did 4 jobs. I've made about the same amount of money as I make at the moment with long jobs, but it did feel a lot more tiring doing 4 stops and starts. I wouldn't discount doing it, but it's not necessarily any better or any worse than what I usually do. So I've got a couple of petrol prices since this week. So my average fuel price this week is updated to 13.51 pence per mile. My total mileage for Friday was 335 miles, 335. So it wasn't a lot less miles than I do usually. I worked for 11 and a half hours. I earned £235, 235, from the 4 CX jobs. That was £60, £50, another £50, and £75 at the end. I spent £45.26 on fuel, and that means that my net earnings after fuel was £190. So not quite what I would like to get, which is 200, but pretty close. Right, my weekly average for this week for 3 days work, it's just 3 full days, nothing in between, no half days. I worked for 32 3/4 hours in total for the week. I drove 1,232 miles in total, 1232, and I earned £652, 652. My fuel for the week was £167.43, so 167, and I earned therefore net of fuel for the week £458, 458. My average amount of money earned per mile door to door for the week is 37.14 pence, which is very poor. That is after fuel, by the way. And then my average amount per day that I earned was £152.52, 152, 153. And if you care about these things, my average pounds per hour earned after taking into account business costs was £6.64 per hour. Now, that was another bad week compared to what I'm used to earning with this job. And I did have a quick look. What was my average daily amount earned in the last 3 weeks? and that was £157 I've earned in the last 3 weeks. So basically in October, that's what I've earned, which is really quite bad, I would say. I looked at the previous 3 weeks before that, in September, and it was £210 per day. So even in that time, from September to October, there's been something that's happened that meant there's less money to be earned on CX than even the month before. And as I said before, it's really quiet compared to last year, really quiet. So there was a comment that I really appreciated on my last video, which suggested it could be to do with the upcoming budget at the end of this month. And to me, that makes a hell of a lot of sense. It could be about nervousness from businesses wanting to spend money at the moment, not knowing what the budget's going to hold for them. So if that is the case, hopefully, fingers crossed, there'll be something that's of relief, some news that's relief in the budget, and that means that we will get back to a bit more normality with our work. Right, I'm going to stop that video there, and then I'm going to do another video when I finish dialysis of the few points that I wanted to talk about that I've written down on my list, and that might be a reasonably long half of the video. So I'll leave it here. I'll speak to you later. Cheers. Right, I'm back. So I've got a few miscellaneous thoughts off the back of Friday's work. I've got 4 written down. I'm going to try and I might do them all. First one's really quick. I usually, in fact I always have my van keys on a metal chain attached to my belt sort of buckle, belt loop on my trousers. And yesterday, Friday, because I picked up my van up early and I wasn't organised, I didn't have my chain with me, and it was so disconcerting having a whole day without that key on a chain. I felt quite vulnerable at first when I thought, I might lose this, quite easily lose this. So I ended up in the end having a little rule where whenever I stopped my van, I put my key in my back trouser pocket so that I would always know it was safe, and if I sat down and couldn't find it, I'd feel it as I sat down, in case I forgot where I put it. And that worked for me on Friday, but just a slight real sort of recognition that the keychain makes my life so much easier. Right, second smallish point. On the CX, I've noticed in the last few days, last 2 or 3 days, a couple of companies advertising for multi-drop work locally to me, and I'm sure it's the case everywhere across the country, but clearly this is now the time of year when drivers will be asked to do the pre-Christmas multi-drop work for a variety of companies. And what I'm hoping that means is that there'll be less drivers on CX than there currently is, and therefore it'll make it easier to get decent paying jobs. I personally have got absolutely no interest and any more physical ability to do multi-drop work, so I will be sticking to what I do at the moment, and hope that lots of you, if you're doing the job still now, decide to do multi-drop work. It's not something for me, but I have done it in the past, but it's not. It might be the right thing for some other people. There's nothing wrong with it in itself, it's just not for me anymore. The next point requires a bit more explanation. I had a situation when I was catching up with my invoices, and I had a shipper that was the person that gave me my very first ever CX job a year and a half ago. and I haven't actually done a job for them since that point. And because it's my first job, and because I wasn't quite sure what to expect and what was going on, they paid me late the first time, and I just assumed I'd done something wrong, and sort of sent them an email saying it's probably my fault, but this hasn't been paid on time. And then within a few days I got paid, and it was not a problem. This week I did my second job for that shipper, and it was quite a significant amount of money. It was £240 including VAT, and I just couldn't afford for that not to be paid. And again, they didn't pay on time. So this time I rang them, and basically once I gave my information. Sorry, I'll go back a step. I regarded the phone call I had was a bit different to what I usually do in terms of what I do, and I'm quite happy with what I did this time. So rather than being quite passive with my phone call, for example, I might say, if I ring someone, "Oh, I've just noticed this is late, can you please let me know when it's going to be paid?" And then I'd get some sort of answer. It could be excuse, or it could be do this or that, or we'll do this or that. And then I'll just leave it at that, and that'd be the conversation. I've just basically prompted them, and I'm hoping that they fulfil what I want them to do. On this occasion, because I remembered them being late the first time, I wanted to be a bit more assertive with my phone call. So the phone call went along the lines of, I rang a mobile number and said, "Are you the right person to talk to about chasing a late invoice, or have you got an accounts department?" And they said they would deal with it. So they asked me my details, and I told them, and then they asked me the amount and everything, and the invoice number and all those things. And then they said, "We'll sort that for you. I'll pass this through to my colleague and then sort it out for you." Now, usually I'd have left the phone call there, but on this occasion I got a bit more clarification from them. So I said something like, "Can you tell me when this will be looked at, and therefore when I'm likely to get paid?" And then they said it'll be the next few days, and I don't know, because it's not me, something like that. So then the next thing I did was I took the person's name I was talking to and made a note of that, and then I think that was it. I think there's two things extra, and so I'd covered myself, and when I put the phone down, I did what I always do is I made a note of that in my software system about what I've done and who I spoke to, and just that I chased it, so I didn't have to keep chasing the same thing. The same day, I had a call back from somebody else who, to me, sounded like it might be the owner of the business, kind of just the way they spoke to me, and they basically said I'd get paid today. And so I thanked them, and then put the phone down, and then I was paid that day. So I'm going to try and replicate that more assertiveness when I'm chasing invoices now. I think that gives me a bit more peace of mind. I.e., I would take the name of the person to talk to and get some sort of idea of timescales about when it's going to be paid. The second thing is, before I rang them, I was quite frustrated with this company, and I thought, I'm going to block these guys once I get paid, because this is quite frustrating. And I want to address that point now. When I resolved it and they paid me on the same day, I then was thinking, probably not wise to block this company. Probably better to do is to just change my expectations for this particular company. Because at the end of the day, I was only paid about a week late, and I was paid the full amount. The difference was I had to phone them and chase them, which is something I don't like doing. But if I stand back from the situation and think, did it take me much effort to chase that? Not really. And I've got my payment, and it's done. Job's done. It's all sorted out. So I could, for example, choose to be vindictive and then never work with them again and don't take the job for them, block them in other words. Or I could choose alternatively to just change my expectation. So if I now expect whenever I do a job for this company, I'll have to ring them pretty much the day that the invoice is due just to check it's happening. That isn't a big problem for me, and it might mean that I get paid on time rather than a week late. Because it doesn't seem to me that this company is trying to not get out of paying, but it does seem to me that this might be a general thing they do. They might just be waiting for people to chase them before they're paying the invoices, which I personally find not a very good way of working. But if I know that, I can mitigate that by chasing them before it even gets a problem. So because the CX is very tough at the moment, and to be fair, it's always tough. If I just change my mindset about this shipper rather than dismiss them out of hand, I get to retain the option of working for them again in the future, and I can sort of still get, rather than closing doors, I keep that door open for future. So to me that seems like a sensible approach forward. If I was to keep getting delays in the future from them and they didn't pay me when I prompted them, I'd have to think about this again, because it might just be that I've completely misunderstood it. I was lucky this time, and that next time I won't get paid at all, or much later. But all I'm going to do is change for this particular company how I work with them specifically as a way of mitigating what I perceive as being the risk of dealing with them. So I'm taking control of the risk management, I suppose, of this particular shipper. Now the obvious thing might be I could do that for all shippers, but I haven't got the time or the energy to do that for all shippers. And there are shippers that do pay regularly, that I use regularly all the time. And I want to mention a positive one here, and then I'm going to bring the two together as to what I've learned from this. There's another shipper that is nationwide and has franchises. And the way they work is each franchise is run obviously individually, but within certain parameters that are similar. But they what's the word? They get a central point to do their invoicing. They contract out. That's not a word. They give a central point all the billing and invoicing jobs to do. So all the payments come from the same company, which is obviously a central point for this franchise. And what that means is I've never got not paid or paid late by this company. So no matter how awkward the franchisee might be, or the people who work for them, I've never had a problem with being paid by them. And I think that's an interesting way of working, and I find it very... when those jobs come up for that shipper, no matter where I am in the country, I will always bid on that, knowing I'll get paid on time for that job. And that's really helpful. So, what's the thing I'm going to tie this together with? This is my sort of... what I took from this is the following thing. When I first started doing this job, just over a year ago, I was influenced by the chatter on the chat groups to some extent about how you should do this job. And there was definitely some people saying they would never work for this national franchise company because they had a bad experience with them. And if I had taken on board that and then chosen to block them myself from their experience, I would have missed out on so much work in the last year and a half. So it's when you're new, you kind of have to take advice from all wherever you get it from. But some advice is better than others. Some advice has more value than others. And I would say the best advice is somebody that knows both you and what you're trying to achieve and the industry that you're working in. This can be in any field. The next best advice would be either someone that knows you very well or someone that knows the industry you're in very well. And you obviously know getting advice from someone who knows you, but you don't know someone who knows the industry very well if you're just starting. But you get to know these people, you get to know these sources of information. And what's the worst kind of advice? Somebody who doesn't know you at all and doesn't really know much about the industry. It's basing it on their own experience only and not a wider thing. And obviously, it's trying to filter out those people is key when you first start. There have been people that would suggest I should block this first customer because they were late. And if it's right for that person to do it, that's fine by me, but it's not right for me. I needed to build up and open up doors, not close doors. So actually, I haven't actually blocked anybody at the moment. I've been very close to doing it, but I've always come to, before I've done it, I've always thought, well, you're actually closing a door of an opportunity here, and what if you're in a quiet place and you don't get a job because of that? And the bottom line is, beggars can't be choosers. I haven't got a lot of contacts that I can go to or around the country for jobs that when I'm sort of need jobs. And people when they first start are often in the same situation. So my sort of point is I think that I'm happy judging what I should do based on my own experience and then trusting people that I trust to give me advice when I ask for it. And that's what I do, and it works for me. And the last point before I go is an analogy that I thought about yesterday that I thought I would share on this channel because it might help explain why I do the job the way I do in the way I do it. Because I know a lot of people don't agree with the way I do my work, and some people don't understand why, and this might help. So the analogy is football, British football leagues in particular, and you could include non-league as well. I'm basically managing on the top 4 leagues: Premier League, Championship League, League Division 1 and League Division 2. And everyone that plays as a player in those leagues enjoys their job and wants to do it as a job. But only the people who are playing in the Premier League get paid extortionate amounts of money, millions of pounds per year. The people in the Championship get paid an extortionate amount of money, hundreds of £1,000s a year. The people in League Division 1 will get perhaps £100,000 or £200,000 a year, and the people in League Division 2 will get perhaps £50,000 to £100,000 a year. But they all do the same job, and they do it probably because they love the job. I would say that's similar to where I find myself. I'm not a Premier League player, Premier League driver, and I would equate in our industry Premier League as being a driver that's really got quite a large business, maybe even has become a shipper and no longer drives for themselves, but they were sort of building a business with that kind of real cutthroat in both enthusiasm and efficiency, and they built something quite impressive and quite lucrative. Championship is probably a driver that again probably does a lot of work for other people as well as their own, but it's probably on the road a reasonable amount of time. A League 1 player is probably someone that's just working for themselves, but is trying to build a business and sort of being quite efficient and being quite, into their marketing, into their growth. They want to grow to something bigger, but at the moment they're just on their own, single driver, and maybe they're looking to get a second van or a second driver. And then there's people like me who are League Division 2, who just want to survive and make a living for themselves, don't want to grow any bigger, just want to earn enough money to make a living. And we're all doing the same job. We're all driving for ourselves. We're all driving to make money from same-day logistics. But and probably we all love the job as well. I'm guessing we do. But I don't need to make excess money. I don't need to make growth money. I just need to make enough money for myself. Now, to continue this analogy to its obvious conclusion, I'm actually probably now technically a non-league player because of being part-time, and maybe in the non-leagues people can't afford to just play football for a non-league club and survive. technically speaking, I probably can't survive on just my part-time wages doing this job, which is why I applied for PIP. And I have got PIP, and I have now got the confirmed amount that I'm getting, and that does help me to pay the bills a bit. I've got another thing on the go that I'm planning to do, which will hopefully help, and I've got other strategies that will sort of try to help me survive until I get to retire. So there's a lot in the background I'm not going to necessarily go into that I'm trying to sort of bring into play and to sort of develop to make sure that I can keep doing this job until I get to retirement age. Yeah, so that's where I stand with this. So that's my analogy. I'm just about, probably now, a non-league player, but I love this job as much as a Premier League player did or did used to. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense to me, at least, when I thought about it. So there you go. That's my little update for this video, and I'll get it clipped together and post it in the next few hours. Thank you very much for listening to my video. Next week is the budget, so I hope that we can all be more successful after that point, if that is in fact what's causing us to be struggling at the moment. So I hope you're being successful, no matter how you choose to find that word for yourselves, whether you're a Premier League, Championship, First, Second Division player, or even just a non-league player. Farewell, friends.